Hello, I'm Bolnerescu, and you're here watching a reaction video to Romania and Moldova uniting. It would be super awesome, in my opinion, if these two countries united. The president of Moldova has even endorsed it, but I know there are some mixed feelings in Moldova, so let's watch this video and see what happens here. This video is from TLDR News. Let's get started.
At a time when states are making great efforts to gain and preserve their independence, the idea of two existing states unifying into one might feel a bit unusual. Since the end of the Cold War, there have only been two instances of countries merging into a single state: the creation of the Republic of Yemen and the reunification of Germany, both which happened around 3 decades ago. However,
I personally did not know Yemen was actually two separate countries before 1990, apparently. I'll have to go look that up after this. That's crazy.
last Sunday, Moldova's President Maya Sandu said in an interview that if a referendum were held, she would vote in favour of unification with neighbouring Romania, as a way of protecting the EU candidate country from Russian interference. Sandu's not alone in supporting this idea either. Polling suggests that around 1/3 of Romanians and Moldovans are in favour, and
Oh, okay. I thought it was higher than 1/3 from the Moldovan side and the Romanian side, both sides, I guess. I thought Moldovans were kind of more at like 40 to 45%, but that's crazy, only 1/3.
in a warm response, an official from Romania's presidential office stated that Bucharest is also open to the possibility. So in this video, we're going to take a look at why some think Moldova and Romania could unite to become one country, and whether unification is at all possible.
I do have to say one thing that would be helpful for Moldova in this certain scenario where Moldova does rejoin Romania is right now they're flanked on the east to Ukraine, and Ukraine is kind of having a lot of trouble moving people. Going with Romania, they would have a more free trade route, in my opinion. Moldova has some of the best wines in the world, from what I hear. So Moldova would be able to trade some of those wines and kind of get an economic boost, hopefully, if they did join in with Romania. Another thing is Moldova, the money isn't going as far as in Romania. Romania doesn't use the euro. Moldova obviously don't use the euro. So like, it will be hard to figure that out, but just economically being able to have that free trade, not just amongst Romania, but also going to other countries in the EU, I think would be huge for Moldova.
Never miss an episode and always feel in the loop by subscribing and ringing the bell.
Hit subscribe
Let's
for them.
start with a quick history lesson. The region that is today Romania and Moldova was once part of the Principality of Moldavia, formed in the 14th century.
So, and a little background, Romania actually had three, like Wallachia, Transylvania, and Moldavia, which all kind of merged into Romania. And Moldova was a sectioned piece that got taken by Russia,
which covered both sides of the Prut River. In 1812, the eastern half of Moldavia, known as Bessarabia, was annexed by the Russian Empire, separating it from the rest of Moldavia. In 1859, Moldavia's remaining western half and Wallachia formed a political union.
There's also a big thing when I was back in Romania in 2022. I'll be excited to see in 2026 if this is still there. But I felt like everywhere I went, I saw signs that said Bessarabia este Romania, Basarabia e Romania. So that means sorry, I can't say this in English. Basarabia is Romania. So there were a lot of signs in 2022 saying, oh man, Moldova should be part of Romania.
And in 1881, they created the independent Kingdom of Romania. After the Russian Empire collapsed during World War I, Bessarabia voted to unite with the Kingdom of Romania in 1918. The Kingdom of Romania also expanded to include Bukovina and Transylvania. Over the next 2 decades, modern-day Moldova and modern-day Romania were officially one country, the Kingdom of Romania. That was until 1940, when Romania was forced to cede both Bukovina and eastern Moldova to the USSR under the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. By the end of the war, the Kingdom of Romania, which would become just Romania in 1947, had recovered Bukovina, but Moldova was lost to the USSR and became
So if you can see here, there's Citate Alba, which means like white fortress. There's Kilia. So a lot of people down here, this is all part of Ukraine. A lot of people down here speak Romanian. Cernuț, it's a place in Ukraine right now, and a lot of people here speak Romanian. It's kind of interesting. I've never heard of Hotin, so I'm not 100% sure, but definitely very interesting. I don't know. This seems more like Russia, Odessa, not Russia, but Russian speakers or Ukrainian speakers, not Romanian speakers.
The Moldovan Soviet Social.
Also, they don't talk about this here, but this little part, this little sliver, was also part of Romania for a while. It is now part of Bulgaria. Just very interesting how these countries can shift and move even, 60 years ago.
Socialist Republic. Fearing reunification, the USSR actively promoted a separate Moldovan identity, meaning that according to Soviet census data from the late 20th century, only around 2,000 people in a population of around 4 million identified as Romanians, despite the close cultural overlap. It also meant that even though the Moldovan and Romanian languages were barely distinguishable, Soviet policy declared that the two languages were different, and to emphasize this distinction, Moldovan had to be written in the Cyrillic alphabet. Since the fall of the...
I actually have a Bible that I can read because I learned how to read Cyrillic, and you read it, like, if a Russian speaker reads it, they won't be able to understand, but I'm able to understand it. It's actually really cool.
USSR, Romania, and the newly independent Moldova have had very divergent paths. Romania went on to join the EU and NATO in 2004, while Moldova has struggled to break out of Russia's orbit. Moldova only became an EU candidate country in June 2022 and has struggled to resist Russian interference in its politics and break its economic dependence on Russia, which maintains over 1,000 troops in Transnistria, a breakaway pro-Russian state within Moldova. Moldova also remains one of Europe's poorest countries, with a per capita income of around roughly 1/5 that of Romania. As a result of these economic and geopolitical challenges, some Moldovans view unification as a potential way to ease these pressures. Speaking in an interview last week, President Maia Sandu, who defeated the pro-Russian bloc in last year's parliamentary elections for a second consecutive time and has strongly pushed for Moldova's accession into the EU, made precisely this argument. She said that it is becoming increasingly difficult for a small country like Moldova to survive as a democracy and a sovereign state, and to resist Russia, adding that she would vote in favour of reunification. Sandu's not alone in supporting this idea either. Several Moldovan parties, including the PPDA, which holds 6 seats in parliament, have publicly declared unification to be one of their political goals. According to recent polling, around 1/3 of Moldovans are also keen for unification, although support is considerably lower in Transnistria and the relatively pro-Russian region of Gagauzia.
Yeah, they're both
But pragmatism obviously isn't the only reason for unification. The two countries also share cultural and linguistic ties, and since gaining independence from the USSR, the number of people in Moldova
It is funny because a lot of people ask me, like, hey, did you speak Moldovan when you were in Moldova? And even on a lot of like things that say, hey, do you speak another language? You can put Moldovan. And people in Moldova say, yeah, I speak Moldovenește, not Romanește. So they speak Moldovan, not Romanian. But they're so similar. There's just mainly, I would say, like words that are different from Romanian to Moldovan. In Moldova, they use some crazy words, in my opinion, where Romanians speak, more proper Romanian. These Moldovans have been kind of more in the countryside. They've had Russian influence, so they get these different words, but it's very, very similar to Romanian. It's just kind of crazy that there is this Moldovan language that I can put that I speak, because when I was in Moldova, I spoke the language with all the Moldovans. I spoke Moldovenește with the Moldovans. So just very, very interesting in that cause.
declaring themselves to be Romanian or Romanian speakers in Moldova has increased markedly. Excluding Transnistria, roughly 8% of people living in Moldova today identify as Romanian, compared to essentially 0 in Soviet times. While the percentage of Moldovans citing Romanian as their mother tongue has essentially doubled since 2004. While in Romania, around 30% of the population also supports unification, although it's less clear what concrete benefits Romania would gain, particularly given the costs of integrating a significantly weaker state. That said, unification would add nearly 1 million working-age Moldovans to Romania's labour force, which could provide a notable economic boost at a time when Romania's population is rapidly declining. For context, Romania's...
Speaking of that, I think there's also land in Moldova. There's plenty of land and beautiful spaces in Romania, but there's land to be had in Moldova that a lot of people could go and maybe move to the countryside and have some space for their family. Just another thought alongside the economic impacts.
Population has fallen from around 23 million in 1990 to just under 19 million today, largely due to emigration of young people to more prosperous EU countries and a persistently low birth rate. However, the way we see it, unification still feels unlikely. For starters, it feels a bit unnecessary. Moving between the two countries is already pretty easy, and today over 850,000 Moldovans, roughly a third of the entire population, already have Romanian citizenship. This will become even easier if Moldova joins the EU and then Schengen. So given the complexities involved in unification, it might just be easier to keep things as they are. But a more important reason is that Moldova poses a bit of a security threat to Romania, as unification would require Romania taking in up to approximately 250,000 Russians, which some Romanians fear would open the door to significant Russian interference in Romanian politics. On top of that, Romania is both a NATO and EU member, and it doesn't seem likely that either will be keen on accepting Moldova without sorting the elephant in the room first, the frozen conflict in Transnistria. Since winning the election last year, Sandu's government has been working on a plan to reintegrate Transnistria with the help of the US and EU. Although the details of that plan aren't public yet, it will almost certainly centre on the withdrawal of Russian troops from the region. While Russia will undoubtedly not be too happy about this, Moldova does hold some significant leverage here. Transnistria's economic situation has deteriorated rapidly over the past year after...
I don't know if anyone's ever seen a video of Transnistria, which means across the Dniester River. But it's kind of like stuck in Soviet time, which is really cool, really amazing. I love that because you can go back and it feels very Soviet, but economically they're very, very dependent on Russia, and Russia right now isn't able to support them economically.
Russia decided to halt gas supplies to the region. So Bucharest's promise of stability, security, and EU energy assistance could be enough to convince Transnistrian authorities.
So that's the end of this video. My thoughts are kind of all over the place because I would love to see Moldova reintegrate in with Romania. I think the cultural ties between Romanians and Moldovans is so incredible. The way that they could get together and become one big happy family again would be awesome. But I also see the struggles with, being connected to Russia still and how that would all work. I see something happening in the future where Moldova and Romania become really great partners. Moldova's, relied less and less on Russia over the last few years, and maybe they can become stronger by themselves, even without reunifying with Romania, but kind of using Romania as a jump board to getting to like EU or the NATO or something that could help them out and really help them progress forward. I also love Moldova. I lived in Moldova for only about 3 months, so it was really short-lived, but I got to know the people. They're very, very nice. The country is actually super beautiful. It's been really well maintained because they haven't had a lot of tourists. They haven't had a lot of money pumped into it to kind of rebuild it, right? So it's actually really authentic and beautiful. What does this say? I don't know what's going to happen with Moldova. I don't know if Romania is going to accept them and they're going to become one reunited Romania again. It's hard to know, but I'm excited for what is to come for the Moldovans and for the Romanians alike. So thank you guys for joining. Have a great day. Peace.